Kenji Eno, the head of Warp Games, was at a Sony press conference, showcasing his new project, Enemy Zero, which was the follow-up and pseudo-sequel to his hit game, D. After a short preview of the game, the video finished proudly showcasing the Sony PlayStation logo. Then, in a move that perfectly exemplifies Kenji Eno's rebellious nature, the Sony PlayStation logo slowly morphed into the Sega Saturn logo. Yeah, the term burning bridges was coined for situations like this. Mr. Eno was apparently not pleased with the way Sony handled its port of D, producing only 28,000 copies when sales orders called for over 100,000. His response was essentially to tell Sony to go fuck themselves and to make his follow-up title, Enemy Zero, a Sega Saturn exclusive. Say what you want about his games, but Mr. Eno had balls.
The history of Warp Games and Kenji Eno is a storied one, but again, it's one I do not have time for in this review. It's enough work reviewing the games, much less talking about the mad genius who made them. Kenji Eno, early in his gaming career, worked with many licensed characters and on many licensed games, and he has stated he hated doing that. He's a man who liked to do his own thing, and you can tell in D, Enemy Zero, and D2 that these are games that he wants to make. So right off the bat, you should know that these games are not for everyone. But you know what, I'm already wasting time. Let's get to it. This is Enemy Zero.
The spacecraft Aki and her crew are returning back to Earth, having successfully completed their mission. Suddenly, the ship's emergency system is activated when some kind of alien creature breaks loose from the bowels of the ship, and the ship's crew are jolted out of cryogenic sleep. Our heroine Laura Lewis, that's Laura Lewis, not Laura Harris, receives a video call from fellow crew member Parker, just in time to watch in horror as an alien creature savagely attacks and kills him. Shortly thereafter, it is revealed there is an untold number of these aliens prowling the ship. How did these creatures get aboard the ship, and what exactly are they? Will Laura be able to save the rest of her crewmates? Will she be able to save herself? It's fair to call Enemy Zero D 1.5, because half the game plays exactly like D. Indoor sequences are restricted to an invisible rail, where Laura moves on a predetermined path until she stops at an invisible intersection.
Most of the story and the dialogue sequences happen in these parts. They're rather subdued, but work well in creating a powerful sense of anxiety and isolation. Personally, I really like the slow pace and the mood it sets.
The other half of the game is also played in the first person, but gives you complete control. You'll spend the majority of your time running through dimly lit winding corridors battling the extremely deadly alien creatures. Unfortunately, these action sequences are both the best and worst part of Enemy Zero. As I'm sure you know, the creatures that plague the ship are invisible, so you must depend on a piano chime to locate them. It's important you tread carefully because they don't hurt you, they kill you instantly. Luckily, this is kill or be killed, since they go down with only one hit too. But the guns you have at your disposal shoot extremely short range, meaning you must be literally inches away from these creatures to take them down, so don't miss. Oh, and by the way, your gun takes a few moments to charge, and if you charge for too long, it'll burn out. So not only do you need to get extremely close to the invisible enemies that kill you instantly, you have to time your shots just right. Fail, and it's game over. The tension is incredible. It could be canned and sold wholesale. Right down to the very end of the game, I was never not on the edge of my fucking seat, and I was never not completely satisfied and relieved when I successfully killed one of these things. Turn off the lights, crank up the sound, and get ready to have the absolute shit scared out of you. Or be ready to yell,
"Oh, fuck you and your stupid worthless gun, Kenji Eno."
For as amazing and heart-pounding as the combat is, it also makes Enemy Zero an extremely difficult game. Imagine Fatal Frame, which you can only shoot right before a ghost strikes you, and if you miss, it's game over. Now, do it blind, working with audio cues only. It's freaking hard.
The timing is something I got used to, but the correct distance was always difficult to gauge. My frustration reached its peak near the end of the game when you had a long sequence of labyrinths, and you had to kill about 5 or 6 creatures without a break. It was both one of the most frightening sequences in video game history, and one of the most frustrating. So for as much as I did enjoy these action sequences, they didn't need to be this hard. But what's the big deal? You've got unlimited ammo and continues, right? Not exactly.
If all this wasn't bad enough, each of your guns quickly runs out of juice and needs to be constantly recharged. So if you miss too many times, you might suddenly find yourself defenseless. Furthermore, your voice recorder, aka the thing that saves your game, also has a limited battery life, but can't be recharged, and it costs energy to both save and load your game. So if you die because you fired your gun a moment too soon or too many times and ran out of juice, loading your game is going to cost you. There's no getting around the fact that Enemy Zero is incredibly unforgiving. But hold on there, things aren't so bad. Contrary to what your crew members say and how they move in the cutscenes, the creatures actually move very slowly. They seem to wander around aimlessly, never actively seeking you out. I'd say about half the creatures in this game can be circumvented, and quite easily since your tracker has enormous range. Once you get a feel for how your tracker works, it's easy to get a beat on a creature and then find another way around. I also highly recommend you pop in Disc 0, yeah I know, really clever right, and practice on the training mode. Second, I recommend playing on either easy or beginner. On easy you start with 99 battery life instead of 64 and your guns last a little longer. Now saving still costs 4 points and loading still costs 2, but it actually makes things pretty balanced and brings the game down to a manageable difficulty. And just because the game spans 3 discs doesn't mean it's super long requiring tons of saves. Remember, there's a lot of CGI here. I died a few times in the beginning, but after I got the hang of things, it was smooth sailing until that marathon segment late in the game, but by then you get a gun that never runs out of energy, so that's good. And though I died a lot on that final stretch, I still beat the game with dozens of points to spare. And if you still find yourself intimidated, there's no shame in playing on beginner, where your recorder also has 99 battery life but only takes 1 charge to save and load. Also, you never have to recharge your guns on beginner, they all have unlimited ammo.
I've beaten Enemy Zero on both easy and beginner, and nothing about the ending changes, and only an extremely minor, pretty much incidental thing changes about the story. Well, I guess the one difference is if you beat the game on normal, you unlock hard mode, where there's more creatures, less battery life, and even fewer charges for your gun. Fuck you, no thanks.
Ooh, there's a bonus shower scene when you play on hard. What am I, in 7th grade? Still not interested. And did Kenji Eno hide this scene from the censors too? How the hell did that guy keep getting teen-rated games? I guess this is another semi-morality crisis, like depending on online facts. But if you can live with playing on easy, then Enemy Zero is a very fun challenge, albeit still very unforgiving.
Kenji Eno is a man that not so much knows how to write a good story, but he definitely knows how to tell one. For example, if I told you the whole story to D, explaining everything, you'd probably say, "That's it? Doesn't sound so great." Because it was the way he spoon-fed the details to you through cryptic messages from your father and the fragmented images from Laura's subconscious. And the same thing applies with Enemy Zero. The story itself isn't all that. In fact, it's an obvious amalgamation of many science fiction classics. It's still expertly told. Mr. Eno masterfully creates a setting with the spaceship Aki and quickly establishes her crew's dilemma. He slowly reveals the truth of what's really going on and then throws in a couple of curveball twists that completely change everything. Again, if I explain the whole plot here for you, you'd be missing the experience of watching these events unfold in front of you. Just like with D, Enemy Zero is not a game to be spoiled.
A lot of the strength from the story comes from its characters, especially the main protagonist, Laura. Again, she's not Laura Harris from D, she's Laura Lewis this time. She is once again a silent protagonist, though she is still very believable as a person because she reacts to things the way a human being ought to. Let me explain. In Resident Evil, it always bugged me when you would pick up a file or a picture that revealed some huge plot twist, but your character seemed to be completely unaware of what they just saw.
For example, I think everyone knows the big plot twist at the end of the first Resident Evil, which was revealed more or less when a character you've known the whole game suddenly appears in a photograph. Now instead of your character going like, "Holy fuck, what's he doing in this photograph?" they're completely unaffected, and it takes you out of the game when your character doesn't react to a bombshell of a plot point.
It was so satisfying to stumble upon a really big plot twist in a document in Enemy Zero and see Laura fall to her knees in complete shock, reacting like an actual person. Again, she never speaks, but when the shit hits the fan, she responds like a genuine human being. I was able to accept that maybe she's just a shy, quiet woman, not someone who doesn't talk because it's convenient for the storyteller, though that may have been the reason. In D, Laura never spoke, but that's just how the game was designed. The only speaking role was Laura's father, who, as a matter of fact, only spoke in the English version. In the Japanese version, it was all text. Here they made an attempt to give our heroine a soul instead of a voice, which I personally found made her easier to sympathize with. Though technically Laura does have a voice.
Voice record number 013, Laura Lewis.
And though these parts are excellently performed by Luscious Jackson frontwoman Jill Cuniff, they're only inner monologues recounting recent developments in the story and are dictated in an appropriate monotone. It's convenient for people resuming old games and a pretty cool feature, but doesn't build Laura's character or draw you more into the story. Of course, this is of no fault to Mrs. Cuniff's performance. For a character that, as far as the story goes, never speaks, she's still incredibly well developed and believable.
Given the state of voice work during the early PlayStation and Sega Saturn days, it was definitely a smart move to have the lead character remain silent. Enemy Zero not only has a great story, but a lot of story, most of it told through cutscenes of characters physically speaking to each other. And much like most games that came out in the mid to late 90s, the voice work here is really bad, but not all of it. The actor who voiced Kimberly must be singled out, as she stands head and shoulders above everyone else.
Parker! Oh, please, Parker!
Oh yeah, and before some of you start reading too deep into this game, saying, oh geez, how typical, the black guy not only dies first, but dies in the opening cinema before the game even starts. Well, the black girl becomes one of the story's most important characters and gets a ton of screen time, and they found a damn good actor to play her, so shut up. The voice work is a mixed bag, but 2 of the 3 lead characters were completely believable, and I very much enjoyed the story all the way to the end. And for a game this old, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
The game also keeps things interesting by having a number of awesome puzzles to bridge the gaps between story development and fighting aliens. So get ready to take a few notes. But I had a few minor issues. Much like in D, halfway through Enemy Zero there's a sequence that drags on a little too long. The game opens up, giving you a bunch of places to explore, but with little to no direction. It's not game ruining, but it's a very noticeable section where game progress stalls. Another issue is the very first puzzle you encounter. I don't know what the hell they were thinking here, but the solution to this puzzle is never actually given to you. Without any indication, you're supposed to just guess the solution all by yourself.
That's a horrible way to start a game. Like, how is I supposed to know? You gotta figure it out all on your own. But now you know, so no complaining.
And one must mention the music. Kenji Eno is many things, including a very accomplished musician. For example, all the music in D was written and performed by him. Pfft, the dude is a mutant. But Enemy Zero features a score written by accomplished composer Michael Nyman, who is best known for writing the score to the 1993 award-winning drama The Piano, winning himself a Golden Globe and BAFTA nomination for his contribution. I wasn't too surprised to find out that a Hollywood-level composer was responsible for the music in this game because it's incredible. But how Mr. Eno got him to do the soundtrack is actually a pretty funny story. To quote from his interview with OneUp.com, there was a big earthquake in Kobe, Japan in 1995, and Michael Nyman was donating pianos to schools in the city. Later, he said he wanted to check out how the pianos were doing, so he came to Japan. When I found out, I invited him to my hotel room and tried to convince him for 6 hours to come work with me. So at the end, Michael was like, okay, I'll do it, just let me go back to my room. We didn't work out terms or conditions, he just said he would do it. And one last thing, Aiko and Shadow of the Colossus director Fumito Ueda got his start as an animator for Enemy Zero. Though according to that same interview, he wasn't with Warp Games for very long. And Mr. Eno doesn't take any credit for his success. Quote, I handpicked him because I saw his potential, but it's not like I groomed him or anything. He already had talent when he came to work.
So in closing, Enemy Zero is an interesting little horror gem. It has its flaws, and just like with D, some will be able to overlook these flaws and others will not. But it's worth mentioning that even though D came out on 3 different consoles, Enemy Zero only came out on the Saturn. So if you're a die-hard Sega Saturn fan, there is no reason you shouldn't own this game. Now, we're almost done with the D trilogy. We got one last game to talk about, which is of course, D2 for the Dreamcast. I'll see you soon. Cheers.